Hey everybody, I'm Joe Killinger. I'm a real estate investor and entrepreneur. And we put these videos together every week to give you all the tips and insights from my experience over the last several years. So make sure you tune in and subscribe, and thank you. Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in. I've got an interesting topic I want to talk about, but I brought in George Pino from Commercial Brokers International. As always, thank you for coming in, George.
Thanks for having me.
I want to talk about evictions versus cash for keys. And I know you've done, back in your auction days, have done, I would say thousands of these things, right?
Wouldn't say thousands, but hundreds definitely.
Okay, we'll go with
hundreds definitely.
It's a critical part to property management or investing. So I thought it'd be good to get somebody in here to really talk about somebody with this kind of experience, to talk about what's the best avenue to go. So I guess let's start with, well, which do you think is the best way to go?
You know, first off, I think it actually is really important as to where the property is located. And what I mean by that are there are different municipalities where it's a lot easier to do evictions and a lot quicker. You know, for instance, in Texas, we own some property out there, and it's quite inexpensive and easy to do an eviction. However, in certain states and certain cities even, it can be very expensive. You know, just to start an eviction can cost $800 to $1,000. In addition, if it goes to a court, it could rack up a bill that could be anywhere from a few $100s extra to $5,000 or $6,000 more.
Okay.
More importantly, you're also losing that time. It can take 2, 3, 4 months to work through the eviction as well as the lockout. If you even if you win the case, you typically don't get the actual eviction. You don't get the property the day that you win the case, at least in California. So you have to wait for a lockout, and depending on the time of year, that lockout can be anywhere from 2 weeks, or it could be up to a month. You know, especially during the holidays.
In California too, they can request a jury trial too, correct? How does that work?
They could potentially request a jury trial, in which case it could cost $5,000 to $10,000 just to litigate and go forward with it. A lot of leases nowadays do have a clause ahead of time that has a material component of renting, that they are agreeing to waive any rights to a jury trial due to the cost and the time frame that it takes to do so. So whether it's an eviction or a lawsuit against the landlord, you know, so it actually is beneficial to both parties in that aspect to actually waive that and go forward from there. You also don't have the benefit in California, especially they typically seal the eviction records. So even if you go forward with an eviction, it really doesn't get the, you know, sometimes I hear a landlord, I want to evict because, you know, I can't believe they did this to me, I want this on the record. A lot of times the records are sealed, so it's not going to be on the record. So really it has to come down to a business decision, in which case cash for keys or basically negotiating a cash settlement for a move out, although it may not feel right, may be the best business decision for you.
Is there a formula on the cash for keys, or is it just, well, whatever you can negotiate out?
I think ultimately it's going to be based upon the formula that I would use if it were my property would be, what is the expected time frame? What's the lost opportunity that I have from not being able to lease it out? What are the potential that this tenant may cause more damage to the property? And then how much is it going to cost me if I were to hire an attorney and have to litigate this? So that in mind, if I could come in, let's say 70-80%, up to 70 or 80% of that cost, obviously that's not where I would start on negotiating it, then it may make sense. You know, when I was doing a lot of the cash for keys negotiations during the for the REOs and real estate auction
the good old days
back in the 90s, you know, we were authorized to go up to 2 times rent.
Okay.
You know, 2 months rent, even though
well, that's actually not as bad as I thought it would be.
No, and then, you know, back then it was actually even easier to do evictions. They were guaranteed win cases because the bank would actually, the bank has, since they foreclosed on our property, they had no, the tenants did not have any rights against the bank. There's no non-disturbance agreements with the bank or anything like that, so the bank would actually evict them or prefer the property vacant due to liability issues.
Okay.
And, because of that, they authorized us to go up to, they wanted it vacant as soon as possible. They'd authorize up to 2 months of rent.
Okay, so 2 months of rent. Well, but that was negotiable. Time frame, it could be any length of time to give them out, or?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was negotiable. We would probably typically start off at a much lower amount and tell them,
A month, 30 days.
Give them 1 month if they move out, if they can move out in 2 weeks, we'd give them X amount.
All incentivized.
All incentivized. They'd also have to leave the property in its current condition. They'd have to be broom clean and no personal property left behind. So it saved the bank money
Right.
by not having to do a lot of repairs, not having to do a lot of cleanup and all that as well.
So you really lean more toward the cash for keys than the eviction, the way it sounds.
I do
Depending on the
in most
circumstance,
cases,
I
but
guess,
yes,
right?
I mean, although sometimes, even on, for some of my properties, yes, I do want, if someone hasn't paid
It's
their
hard.
rent and stuff, but ultimately, you bought the property as an
Yeah,
investment.
I mean,
And
it's
it's really a business decision.
Right. It's very difficult to pay somebody to move out of your property, especially if they haven't been paying rent, they've been damaging it. But you've got to look at it as a business decision. Cash for keys could be less hassle, less expensive, less time consuming. You get into eviction in some states, you end up in front of a jury. That could be a pretty big number. So. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in, George. Thank you, as always, for coming in and enlightening us with your knowledge. And I'm going to put George's contact information down below. And remember, please subscribe. We do this every week. I'll see you soon.